The article I'll be speaking about now is Divided Loyalty, an analysis of fantasy football involvement and fan loyalty to individual National Football League teams. It was written by Brandon Dwyer. This article investigated the relationship between fantasy football involvement and traditional NFL fan loyalty. So pretty much this article spoke about how fantasy football specifically can affect how someone is loyal to their team. When it comes to the literature review, they talked about pretty much how the mechanics of fantasy football and how it works. They said how fantasy football allows you to control your lineup, allows you to move around whatever players, edit, do what you want to do. And they say how you can adapt to consumer motivation and behavior is not an option and is an absolute necessity for competitive survival. That was a quote from Blackwell, Miano, and Engel. When it comes to the methodology of this article, they did a survey with 6 major parts and 26 items. The survey consisted of 18 or older people who and they did it on fantasy football because it's the most popular fantasy sport. The respondents were from a pool from the FSTA, which is the Fantasy Sports Trade Association, and that's pretty much how the experiment was. Now, when it came to the results, despite there was 367 participants and who began the survey, and 325 completed it. The average participant was Caucasian, which was 95% of the participants. 93% of them were male, and 49% of them had a bachelor's degree. Also, 55% were married, and 56% had an annual income of $75,000 or higher. 66% said that they spent more than 2 hours on the internet, and 18% said that they spend no money on fantasy, while 36% said they spent at least $100. Now, pretty much, they were talking about this in the results because they were showing all the reasons of why fantasy football players could be have a loyalty problem with their team, because when you play fantasy, you could have a player, and when you have that player, you see him in a game and you might go for him, but he'll be going against your team. And when you know you've put so much time, or when you spent money, or the relationships, it makes you want to have your fantasy player win, and that's when you can question sometimes your loyalty within your team. So I think this article did a pretty good job on answering that question.